Hi, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about Rory and what happened. If you don't already know, about 3 years ago I lost my daughter. I mentioned it in my introduction video to my YouTube channel and I said I would talk about it, so here I am. This is going to be one of the worst topics I have ever discussed, but I am going to get through it. So grab a snack. Where to start? April 18th, 2014. I was 9 months pregnant and I was just at home. I was cleaning because when you're pregnant you like to nest. It's a pregnancy thing, you clean everything. But I was just cleaning at home and I thought I was in labor. So we started timing my contractions and my husband stayed home from work, and when it got around what we thought was 5 minutes, we called his mom because she was going to drive us to the hospital, and driving us to the hospital because we didn't want to pay for parking, because nobody wants to pay for parking. But we get there and we get settled in upstairs and the nurses are checking me out and everything's fine with baby, which is good. But they said I wasn't in labor, but they wanted to keep me to run some tests, which was fine. I had no problem with that whatsoever. I just wanted to make sure everything was good. They had assumed I was having Braxton Hicks. Braxton Hicks are light contractions, but they're not. They're fake contractions. So they ran their tests and they kept checking my blood pressure. Now, when you're pregnant, if you don't know, high blood pressure can be really bad. It can mean you have preeclampsia. And preeclampsia is an infection in the placenta that basically stops oxygen going to the baby. It can cause stillborns. It can cause a lot of health problems for the mother. So they were keeping me under close watch. A normal blood pressure reading is about 120/80, and I was reading at 180/102, which is pretty high for my situation. So they decided that they were going to induce me, and they took me into my room where I would be essentially be having Rory, and my mom came down, and it was her and Tez in the room with me, and they started hooking me up. They got my IV in. They checked to see if I was dilated. I think I was 1 centimeter dilated at this point. They did, and then the doctor came in. She did the induction, and things started to progress, or so I thought. So about, I'm going to say 2 hours later, no, let's say this was about 12 a.m. Saturday morning, because I went on Friday at 5 p.m. and then they finally got me induced at 12 a.m. Saturday morning. So everything's going fine. The nurse checked me and she said, I believe you're 4 centimeters. Would you like an epidural? So I said yes. The pain was getting to be unbearable at that point, and I opted for the epidural. If you're against it, you're against it. It was my choice and I got one. So after that, it was pretty much smooth sailing. I hadn't progressed at all, and they checked me again probably about 4 o'clock in the morning. And the doctor said that I actually hadn't dilated at all. So they gave me an epidural when I didn't need one. I was only 1 centimeter dilated still, and I had had my epidural. So that was the first oops. Rory was still doing fine. Her heart rate was fine. They had no concerns whatsoever for her. The majority of the concerns were on me with my blood pressure. And they had given me Pitocin, obviously, to jumpstart the labor, and they had given me a blood pressure medication to kind of help bring it down. We needed to bring it down so that I didn't have a stroke or anything like that. It can also cause seizures, and just, it turns out not to be pretty. Eclampsia, and I knew what the outcomes could be, and I was terrified, the majority of what could happen. And they denied me my C-sections. The nurse even went and asked a few times, and she denied me. Anyways, I'm not progressing, I'm not progressing, I'm not progressing. And then around, let's say 11 o'clock that night, so Saturday night, I started Friday, don't forget. So Saturday night, around 11 p.m., the epidural wears off. Like, there is no more medicine coming into my bag to numb anything. And I went from 2 centimeters dilated to 8 centimeters dilated within 15 minutes. And at this point, I could feel Rory. I could feel exactly where she was, and I was ready to push. And they wouldn't let me. So I'm crying, like crying, please just let me push. I just need to get her out. She's ready to come. And they're saying, no, hold her. We're taking you for a C-section. So I don't know to this day what made them want to take me at that point. I'm assuming something happened with Rory's heart rate, but I don't have the records at this particular moment. So I'm holding her in, and they rush me to the operating room. And it felt like forever. And I had read up a lot on preeclampsia, and I knew what the outcomes could be, and I was terrified, the majority of what could happen. And they denied me my C-sections. The nurse even went and asked a few times, and she denied me. Anyways, I'm not progressing, I'm not progressing, I'm not progressing. And then around, let's say 11 o'clock that night, so Saturday night, I started Friday, don't forget. So Saturday night, around 11 p.m., the epidural wears off. Like, there is no more medicine coming into my bag to numb anything. And I went from 2 centimeters dilated to 8 centimeters dilated within 15 minutes. And at this point, I could feel Rory. I could feel exactly where she was, and I was ready to push. And they wouldn't let me. So I'm crying, like crying, please just let me push. I just need to get her out. She's ready to come. And they're saying, no, hold her. We're taking you for a C-section. So I don't know to this day what made them want to take me at that point. I'm assuming something happened with Rory's heart rate, but I don't have the records at this particular moment. So I'm holding her in, and they rush me to the operating room. And it felt like forever. And they get me in there. Tez isn't with me yet. He's getting dressed. And they get me up on the table, and they give me a spinal tap just to numb everything, because they're going to be cutting in. So it numbs me from basically just under my chest all the way down through my legs. And after that, they brought Tez in, which is another story. I will tell that too in a later video. So Tez is with me. He's at my head. Everything seems to be going fine. It feels like forever and a day until they get her. But they get her out, and she's screaming. Bloody murder, and it is the best sound that I have ever heard in my entire life. So the nurse brought her over so I could see her. And they said, you know, this is your baby girl. And I was saying, "Hi, Rory, I'm your mommy," and just taking it all in. And then not even a split second later, she stops crying. So they rushed her over to the table and were working on her. They called all kinds of doctors up. The pediatrician who was on call got called in. She started crying again, and she cried on and off for the remainder of her life, which we'll continue with that. So they took me into, they cleaned me up, they sewed me up, and they took me into another room where my family could come and see me. So at this point, they had drugged me up pretty good. I think they knew that the stress of everything could cause me to have a stroke because my blood pressure was so high. So they gave me some anti-anxiety medications, I'm sure, and they really made sure that I wasn't going to feel anything emotional, which I kind of hate them for, but at the same time, they're trying to save my life, so I'll let that go. But I tended to black out, so I don't remember everything that happened. So at 12 a.m., I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Rory Elizabeth. And she was perfect. They brought my family in, and they were talking to me. I don't really know what was said. I know that my stepfather had brought a little stuffed elephant for her, which I also have with Rory right now. And I remember them saying, you know, everybody's got to go out, we got to go out. And I'm going, okay. And they go, "I'm really sorry, Miss Dyson," because my name was Dyson at the time, "but your daughter isn't going to make it." And it just floored me. Sorry. They then wheeled me down to see her. I don't remember how I got there, but Tess says that they wheeled me down on the bed. They took me down to the pediatric emergency station where she was being worked on. And they took me in to see her, and I didn't hold her, which I regret more than anything on this earth. But I held her hand, and she was beautiful. She looked just like my son. My son and her were identical at birth. It's hard to explain how I felt in that moment. I was so in love with somebody that was going to leave me, and I couldn't understand it. But I held her hand, and the pediatrician said, you know, she's suffering. I had just got there, and all he wanted me to say was to stop, just to let her go. So I did. I said, you can stop, and they let her go peacefully. Well, I was holding her hand. My husband at the time, he begged me not to hold her, and I think that he couldn't handle it, so I can't hate him for that. I really do believe that he would not have been able to handle me holding her. And then basically after that, I was in the hospital for a while. And they had me sedated the whole time. Like, it wasn't something that I was awake for. I didn't know who was there. Apparently nobody left my side. My whole family slept over and stayed with me. But I think I'm going to end it there. There will be a part 2. So please subscribe. It'll be telling you what happened after that, and we will go into more detail on the grieving process and my sicknesses after, because there was a lot. Thank you for watching.